We've got Senator Tom Cotton explaining us a breakdown of what's actually going on in Gaza right now with the whole starvation and lack of aid, all this stuff. I'm Tal the Traveling Clad, your favorite white colonizer, Zionist Prince Zionizer. Let's take a look at this clip.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Arkansas.
Well, here we go again. Hamas is on the verge of defeat, so it's cranked up the propaganda machine once again. Now, Hamas wants the world to believe that Israel has undertaken a campaign of deliberate starvation of the Gazan population. And as usual, Hamas can count on an international media and political chorus to fight their battles for them and try to bully Israel into submission. So I'd like to set the record straight. First, let me observe that no decent person wants to see innocent children caught in the crosshairs of war and suffering from hunger and malnutrition. Israel agrees, of course. That's why, since Hamas started this war with its brutal atrocities, Israel has helped bring into Gaza approximately 96,000 trucks containing nearly 1.5 million tons of food, 46,000 tons of medical supplies, 60,000 tons of water, and around 170,000 tons of shelter equipment. Put simply, children in Gaza aren't going hungry because of lack of supplies from Israel. They're suffering because Hamas uses food and humanitarian aid as a weapon to stay in power. Now, you may see these easels next to me and believe I'm about to show you heart-wrenching images of malnourished kids. That's what some more gullible senators have done lately, and I'm afraid to say gullible might be a charitable way to describe their motives. Much like the New York Times buying hook, line, and sinker the images of Gazan children afflicted with terrible diseases, but passed off as malnourished. But no,
scam.
I have other images to show, namely the immense volume of food that's being ruthlessly withheld from the children of Gaza. Pallets and pallets of United Nations aid are just waiting to be distributed to the children of Gaza. Some of these contain canned goods, such as chickpeas, white beans, green peas, and carrots. But these supplies, at this very moment, are sitting and baking in the hot sun instead of feeding hungry kids. While this situation is shocking, it's not at all surprising. After all, Hamas's infiltration of UN aid mechanisms is well documented. Time and again, we have seen Hamas terrorists divert aid shipments to themselves or loot delivery trucks, only to resell the supplies on the black market at outrageous prices. Last year, this terrorist-infiltrated aid system, managed by the UN and others, allowed Hamas to rake in more than $500 million in profit. Profits that fund Hamas's campaign of terror against Israel and its own people. How critical is this systematic theft to Hamas's grip on power? Well, one of Hamas's chief demands in recent ceasefire negotiations has been the dismantling of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a new charity created specifically to end Hamas's stranglehold on aid and supplies. The foundation has even offered to distribute UN aid for free, despite the risk to its own people. And much of this aid, which is sitting in the sun and partly taxpayer funded, is already inside Gaza. It simply needs to be picked up and distributed. But the offer has fallen on deaf ears because Hamas uses humanitarian aid as a tool to fund, facilitate, and fight its war against innocent children, against Israel, against the civilized world. And Hamas's cheerleaders, apologists, and dupes in Europe and America, and sadly here in the U.S. Senate, once again turn a blind eye to Hamas's crimes, blaming instead Israel and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They demand that Israel agree to a ceasefire that preserves and rewards Hamas, while also delivering even more humanitarian aid to Gaza for Hamas to steal and exploit. They expect Israel to feed the very people who attacked, raped, and murdered innocent Israeli men, women, and children on October 7th. And I would remind everyone, not a few American victims as well. Once again, Israel is facing demands placed on no other nation in the world. I don't recall from my history lessons, for instance, the United States providing humanitarian aid to Germany and Japan in World War II. On the contrary, the Allies imposed naval blockades that led to widespread shortages in those enemy nations. When, in the annals of history, has the victim of an unprovoked war of aggression ever been held responsible for the nutrition of the aggressor? Put simply, Israel doesn't have any responsibility to send a single loaf of bread to Gaza. I wonder why so many senators, pundits, podcasters, and European politicians impose this unique standard on the Jewish nation. Why could it be? But despite all that, despite the brutal slaughter of nearly 1,200 Israelis on October 7th, despite Hamas's continued repression of its own people, Israel is still delivering aid to Gaza, while Hamas rips it from the hands of hungry children. Once again, we see very simply and very clearly in this war who is on the side of justice and who is on the side of evil. And I would ask anyone who places these singular demands on Israel, whose side do you want to be on? And if you truly care about the children of Gaza, as I do, as Israelis do, as any decent person surely does, I would encourage you to support President Trump's statement of moral clarity and strength from earlier this morning. The fastest way to end the humanitarian crises in Gaza is for Hamas to surrender and release the hostages. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Tom Cotton is absolutely correct about everything that he said. And, you know, I like that he kind of understands the narrative now that needs to be handled with Israel. You can't say it's anti-Semitism, but, like, that's what he's alluding to, right? Why is Israel held to a different standard than every other country on planet Earth? It's obviously because of, specifically, it's peddled by Arab anti-Semitism, which then unlocks, like, a sort of weird Western anti-Semitism where they get all fucking excited and horny about it. They're like, oh my God, we can be anti-Semitic again. Let's do it. But we're not allowed to say that because anti-Semitism has become a meme. So fine, we won't say the word anymore to not make you uncomfortable to describe your affliction. But you have a weird thing where you have to, specifically, the only Jewish state in the world, you hold them to a different standard than every other country on planet Earth. Why is that? Do you think it may be something wrong with you? Do you think you may be retarded? That's also an option. It could be that you have a mental illness. I don't know. There's a lot of options on the table. We can analyze all of them. We can analyze some of them. But I think when we put it down to brass tacks, I think it has something to do with you. I think there's something wrong with you. And this is me being a doctor here right now for a moment. I think there's something wrong with you. If you can look at Gaza and see the fact that there are millions of tons of humanitarian aid that have been brought in, and also thousands of tons of humanitarian aid that are sitting on the border. How do I know? I've seen it with my own eyes. How do I know? All of my friends were there this week. They were taken by the army to go see it. How do I know? if you can see that all that's sitting on the border and the UN is the one not facilitating it, and they even offered to bring it in for the UN and the UN said no, then maybe, just maybe, it's not Israel's fault. Maybe. This situation is not Israel's fault. You want to talk about the bombing and the murdering kids, and you want to stand on the bodies of women and children the way you love to do. Tfaddal, Habibi, go, be my guest. Go stand on their bodies because it's the only thing you have in your argument. But, with the aid situation, the one thing we can give Israel is that they've brought in ample aid from the beginning of this war. And they don't need to. There's some international law, depending on how you go around it, occupying force, this and that, whatever, you can say that Israel has to. But it's a big gray area, considering the fact that Israel left the Gaza Strip and was attacked by the Gaza Strip. So it's no longer forced to actually bring in the aid. But it does it anyways, just to be safe. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you a long time. Goodbye, class. If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to support me, being PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or joining my Patreon community down below. Patreon is the best way to support my channel, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks depending on what tier you join. Another great way to support me is by buying my merchandise on thetravelingclat.com. I regularly drop new merch designs like this beautiful hat, or this amazing shirt, where you can support the channel and get something cool for yourself. I also have an amazing Discord community with people from all over the world. Thank you so much for your support.